Mark Schlichting, I could do this event. And he agreed to come in. At that point, he was a rock star. And because, you know, he had to deal with Dr. Seuss, he was sitting on top of the world in terms of the first, you know, the living books. He had almost all of the ebook space, and he was the designer, he was the architect, and this guy was going to come speak at this little group in Lambertville, and he agreed to share these ideas, and he's been so generous with his knowledge and helped so many people along the way, and that's just his nature. And so I'm really happy to give Bart 16 minutes. And it's going to be a darn good 16 minutes because he did this. He had a good rehearsal at the ebook retreat. He's going to talk about the art and science of the animated hotspot. Mark Schlichting.
Thank you. It's always tough following Darren. Last time he got a standing ovation, so it's like I'm going, oh no, I got to follow Darren again. And I want to say a little piece on Darren too. Whenever I'm trying to explain to somebody who doesn't understand about play patterns, I show them that fly swatter app that we were just looking at, because that's a perfect example of intrinsic motivation. Because the kid is so motivated to go for that SWAT that they will jump in and explore all of those different avenues of getting there. And it's a hard thing to find. And, you know, I've been peeling back the layers of play patterns to try and understand, well, what's the play pattern behind this? What's the play pattern behind this? And I realized when I was standing over here that that's the closest thing without guns that we have to hunting. You know, is going for that fly, and there's something satisfying about getting it because it's okay to get the fly. So the art of the animated hotspot. And it's an interesting thing. We're talking about play patterns here. Let's see if I got my work in here. So actually I want to start with play. Because play is universal. Play is in kids' DNA. And it isn't just humans, but all mammals play. Otters, bears, our dogs, you know. When the dog has got the other end of that sock, and he's going, I want this sock, I want this sock, I want this sock. He doesn't really want the sock. He wants to play with you. So play is so deeply engaged in who we are that it's almost invisible to us. It's part of our mammalian beings. And it's also how kids naturally learn about the world. This has been going on for millennia. You go out and you explore. You go out and you look. It's just a huge piece of us. And yet, when a lot of people come to create something for kids, they totally throw all that out the window and say, here's my agenda. Here's what I'm going to drag them across. This is the information they need to know, without realizing that how they really learn is by play. And as Darren said, we don't have to make learning fun. Learning is fun. We just have to not ruin it in the process for them. And kids are naturally curious about everything, especially the younger ones, because they've landed in this alien planet. They've got a body. They're trying to learn a language. They're trying to learn a culture. There's so much going on, and they want to know about everything. Anne Lamont, the writer, was talking about going on a trip. She won some money and from a contract on one of her books, and she took her then 3-year-old down to Club Med, first time she'd ever done something like that. And she was signed up for tennis lessons for herself. And she was really excited, and there was a wonderful daycare center. And she walked out the door with her 3-year-old, and he took 3 steps, squatted down on the ground, and went, a bug. And she said, going anywhere with a 3-year-old is like going somewhere with somebody on acid, because they're just like, everything was so interesting to them. And she had to let go of getting to her tennis lesson because he was having a moment with this unusual bug because they were in a new climate, a new bug. And our job is to support that play. You know, what we really want to do as designers is we want to create engagement. And how do we create that engagement? And there's a lot of different ways to approach it. But, you know, this is what we want. We want this happy face. We want the insight. We want the aha that comes from being curious and having that been supported. So we're just, really what we're doing is we're creating an environment and then we're supporting their natural desire to explore. And Warren and Darren were just talking about different ways where you can run them through the challenge level or you can let them explore. You know, whatever we can do that gets them time on task inside the activity. That time on task is where the real learning comes in. I had a teacher told me one time, a spiritual teacher actually, who said that if you could keep your attention on the same thing for 16 consecutive thoughts, you'd have a new insight about where you'd be in a different consciousness than you were before. Whether you were just looking at a pair of pliers and saying, well, these, you know, there's a nick on here, and well, these were made in Japan, they look different than the American pliers, and, you know, I wonder who figured out the first lever, and 16 thoughts later, you know a whole lot more than you did about the first time when you just picked up those pliers. So having time and the opportunity to explore things is really important. And play patterns are device independent. That's what's so wonderful about them. You know, when we really identify with a really strong play pattern, we really know you're doing something that's been going on for a long time. And one of my favorite examples is if you watch boys and girls, but particular boys with blocks, they build them up, you know, build this structure. And the next thing that happens, wham, they knock them all down to the most loud and crashing effect they can, and then they'll repeat it. And then you look at Angry Birds, which is, you know, you see this, there's a building with all the little characters in it, and the kid's job is to knock those blocks down. You know, it takes them a nanosecond to figure out what's going on there. So this is a really old play pattern that's just laid right into a game. Here it is, okay. Oh, what a great idea. Well, it's actually tapping into that play pattern in the same way the Aaron Swatter game attaches to the fly. So the art of the hotspot is really answering the question, what's that? What is that? What is that? And so you're following that natural curiosity. And it really is, there's a big thing about knowing who your audience is and what age they are and what is the stuff that they're super interested in. But for the younger kids, I would call it turning over rocks. The hotspot is just like turning over rocks on the beach. Oh, what's there? And if I get something, I'm gonna turn over a few more and see if I get a crab or I get a snail or I get something else that's hiding into that rock. So this is a page from Harry and the Haunted House, and from one of the living books, and which have been re-released this last year by Wonderful. And there's 32 active spots on this page, not including navigation. And that's, I think 12 of them are just the text. So, but everything does something. And here's some of the rules for making good hotspots. Highly responsive. Warren talked about this yesterday. It's got no delays. You know, the elevator door that wouldn't open quickly enough, that kills it, because kids expect this environment to be just like the real world. I touch it, it moves. I touch it, it moves. I touch it, it moves. And delay is not an option. You know, latency. There's no excuse for latency today. And kids are very critical of that, because if it's slow, it seems dumb to them. It's really important that you give kids control. At least from my point of view, you know, especially in something like this, Living Books was designed for emerging readers. So an emerging reader is making the cognitive link between the text and the sound and the look of the word. And we wanted to play with storybooks. So in this particular environment, the story, all of the characters are all written, but we wanted them to have the text be part of the exploration. And one of the interesting things that we learned was that everybody, like 5 and under, all the emerging readers, would click the sentences in sequence. It must have been a long time since. And they would go through it. Everyone would do it this way because they were mapping the sentence and reading it to themselves. Mapping and reading, mapping and reading. And the 8-year-old would come in and click them all out of order. You know, the wind blew up grandma's dress. Usually the funniest thing they could think of. They were playing with it completely differently than the emerging target market was. And so the idea of all the active pieces here was just to keeping them all in the environment. And so giving them control to just explore was a really big piece. And in fact, when we recorded the words, we didn't just record them flat. We actually recorded them in the same emotional strand where they goes up and down, so you had to go, it must have been a long time, so that you're actually were getting the same reading, whether you did it by clicking on the baseball, which read the whole story, or if you did it one by one. It's important to have inviting content. It just kind of goes without speaking, but if it's interesting, this is that it has to have that, what's that? What's that? What does that do? It has to draw them in enough. And if it looks tappable, it should be. No phantom buttons. This is a thing I see a lot of time where you have an environment and these things are tappable, but no, you can't go in the house. No, you can't go here. No, you can't touch that. Nothing. It might even move a little, but it's not rewarding your exploration. So it's an important piece that if they think it's tappable, then it should be. And we've had to go back and add things to, when we were doing Just Grandma and Me, we had a second scene where they get to the beach. There's a lifeguard sitting in a chair, and you know, there were 30 buttons on the screen, but kids kept clicking on the chair because the lifeguard's chair they thought would do something, and so we had to make the chair do a little galloping thing, just standing in place because so many kids clicked on it that, oh, they all knew that was supposed to do something. Keep the animation short. Even in living books, when I go back and look at them, I realize that I would make a lot of these shorter than they were, because the reward is just that you're getting something back from the pieces. And sometimes a longer animation will do, but really, in general, you want to keep them short and responsive. And in books and in most environments, you want to support the story. So since this is about a haunted house, you know, that actually, the picture here, the picture is not, the ghost is not actually, you don't actually see it until you tap on it. This is actually from the book. And let's see. And then there's a thing that comes up all the time when we're testing with kids, or when Dan was talking about it yesterday, where the states were falling off the edge of the page. That's a feature, not a bug. When we were we were first getting the words working, really no one had really done this before. Actually, the Broderbund, the company I was working for, went out and patented, I'm one of the patent holders. If you click on a word and it highlights and says it, we have a patent for that. But of course, you know, they would never, no one could ever enforce it, but it was just one of those kind of things because we were in the new territory, let's patent everything, because Apple was patenting everything. And, but when they first tapped on the words, they realized that if the kids tapped twice, it would override the first one. And you know, my educators that I was talking with and my programmers said, okay, we'll fix that, so it only plays once. When I was watching kids play, I realized that no, I wanted them to be able to do that. I wanted them to be able to rapid tap on it. And because, you know, and then they were like rapping with it, baby, you know. They were having fun with it, time on task. They were playing with the words. That's what I want. So I'm coming back to this point. These boys, there's a bug there. What happens if I touch that bug? There's potential here, you know. There's potential for excitement. There's potential for action. What's it going to do? What's it going to do? What's it going to do? Is it going to jump? Is it going to jump? Is it going to attack us? You know, is it going to squish? You know, what's it going to do? They want to know. And he's very gingerly, okay, if I put this little stick down here and touch it, you know, I'm going to see what happens. That potential, this is what I'm looking for if I'm designing something that's related to hotspots. What's going to draw them in, you know? What is it? So, no one's talked about this much, but audio is really one of the magic hidden ingredients. And It's second in terms of visual. So we're primarily visual beings. We think we take in something between 70 and 80% of our information through our eyes. We take it in, bang, you know, right now you take it in, take it in, take it in, take it in. And, you know, you are hearing me, but audio just sort of comes in through the side doors of the brain, and it kind of runs in the background more. So you're filtering out the guy with the saw out front, and you're filtering out the sounds of the ocean and cars going by, other people coughing. You kind of filter all that out, but that's all still going into your brain. And so audio has this, a whole set of special things that I think are important to keep an eye on. The first thing is that it complements the illusion of reality and place. If you're creating an environment, you know, if you're outdoors, well then, you know, have some bird sounds. You know, if you're in the city, have a car drive by or a car sound. Have something that makes you feel immersive in the environment. But it's even much deeper than that, because you can make something be real just by, you know, you have a car and you move it, and, you know, but if it goes when it peels out, then you feel like, oh, that was really more satisfying, you know. And sometimes we have to just test the audio with kids to see which of the sounds that are really playing for them. So audio, even a little bit of audio goes a long way. And it's that piece about the side doors of the brain. We don't have ear lids, so we can't shut it out. It just is always coming on. So you always want to be paying attention to what is the audio experience that's going on. And it's the carrier of emotional content. So we all know this from the movies. You know, how does it feel? You know, I often used to tease my kids. We're at a movie, and all of a sudden, it's the cellos. And I always go, look out, the cellos are coming. The cellos are coming. You know? Because what they're going to do is they're going to do this long, drawn-out bow. No, and they're going to jump at you and scare you, and they're setting you up for that. So whenever I hear the cellos coming, I'm going, uh-oh, you know, one of these guys is going to get scared, or I'm going to get scared. So, and also, as humans, we have a big portion of our brain, especially when we're very young, is devoted to interpreting language. We have, I think, a 6-month-old or a 3-month-old can distinguish between 16 different voices. I mean, it's amazing the part that we have. It's all about face and voice when we're very young. But emotional content is all in the way you say things. So, you know, a good actor can say, hello. Well, that wasn't really hello. If you read that on a page, it would say hello. But it was like, you know, that was more like, hello, you're bothering me. So there's a whole other subtext that comes in with the emotional content of how you flavor things. And you don't even, you know, for international, you don't even have to have words. You can have grunts or laughter. You know, a lot of things are just universal and they're also contagious. Good audio makes good graphics look better. There's been several studies on this, one at Stanford and one at MIT that I know of, where they ran people through rooms where they had TV sets. And in one of the rooms they had one TV, and it said entertainment and television, entertainment and news. And they'd taken all a bunch of news stuff and a bunch of entertainment stuff, and they'd intercut them together and put them on one TV. And then they had, in the next room, they had 2 other TVs, and one said news only, and the other one said entertainment only. And then they ran all these people through to watch them and then talk about what they saw. And even though they were exactly the same cuts, everybody said that actually this is a little different study, but they said that all of the news one was really more well-researched and more authoritative than the news and entertainment one. And that the entertainment one, the colors were better and it was much funnier material. And so many people wrote that the colors were better that they had to go back and check all the TV sets. And they also did a study where they had really high really high resolution images with really crummy 6-bit sound. And then they had kind of grainy images with really high-end sound. And everyone said that the high-end sound ones looked better. So it's amazing what audio does, but it's happening to us on an unconscious level for the most part. And it's the cheapest form of animation because it takes place in your mind. Neil Stephenson, the science fiction writer, said that about text. He said text was the ultimate software because it decompresses in your head. And because you imagine what's going on. You create it all from your own imagination. And it's the same thing with audio files and animation. So a lot of times in our story, The Tortoise and the Hare, we had to build everything into 2 meg of RAM, all of our animations, all the text, everything in this very small environment. So what we did was we made it so that the hare ran out and ran around behind his tree in the mornings. And depending on where you had clicked on his door, you got different sound effects because it was the easiest way to go. So you might go brush his teeth, flush the toilet, you can hear all these things that are going on. And and then he comes back in, and there he is, and he appears, and he goes back in the house. And you imagined all the things that he just went and did. And it's the same thing, and it's actually a trick gathered from lots of Saturday morning cartoons when I was young, is that something happens, takes the main character off the screen, you hear crash, bang, boom, cats, meow, and all this stuff going on, and then the character staggers back in to the scene. You just imagined all the stuff that happened off screen. So that's really cheap animation. Throwing some sound effects files in there just saved you $5,000 in trying to make this complicated scene. And then one of the last main things about audio is this picture. This is an example of a brain-based joke. It's when you think you're going to hear something and what you get is something different. Psychologically, it's called a categorical mistake, but it's a square peg in a round hole. On the first page of Just Grandma and Me in Living Books, which I had to demo thousands of times to groups of 300, 400, 500 people at Macworld, and there was a gag on the first page where there was a little bird in the tree, and you clicked on the bird, and he flew down into the scene, and he kind of did a loop, and he flew back past the cow, kind of buzzing by the cow, and back into the tree. And there was really nothing super special about it, except the sound designer, we dropped in an airplane sound. And so it's meow, and back up. And about 3/4 of the way through, about a third of every audience, kids and adults, would go, huh? There'd be this little laugh in the group, and I kept hearing it. I was trying to figure out what was happening. It was that moment when the square peg didn't fit in the round hole, and then everybody would laugh. And it tickles you, and oh, that was charming, but you don't even quite cognize the effect that the brain-based joke was having. Another one of the really important things that I think has been missed a lot in all interactivity is the nature of the power of surprise. And it sparks interest. When you're surprised, it's a psychological arousal. All of a sudden your mammalian body goes on alert, and your attention goes up. And it's generally not predictable. The most predictable is probably Jack in the Box. And even then, you're still kind of, it's coming, and it still gets you. You're still surprised. You watch kids do it to themselves. They get this jerk, they get a jolt, and then they put it back down, and they wait, and then they do it again, and they get another jolt, And it's very interesting to watch that loop. It causes, what's the word? Yes, disequilibration. That's that thing about sparking the interest. It throws them off just a little bit. And then they want to know, what was that? It sparks the what was that from before that drives them back in deeper. And it's a real, it's a powerful tool for intermittent reinforcement. And this is one of those things where I had felt the same way that Barbara Chamberlain had originally about Skinner. When I was in school, that was he seemed like a rat torturer to me. And and was about 1984 conditioning the humans. But as I learned about him more, I found that he actually came into the school system to reform it, where corporal punishment of children was really more the rule. And he was like really wanting to make it less violent and to be good. And he really did a lot of wonderful things related to that. And intermittent reinforcement is one of the things that he talks about. And when you have a product that, as you get into the older ages with kids, the little kids will play things over and over and over and over because the world is still new to them. And, a hotspot, they'll hit the same hotspot 20 times, 30 times, they have their favorites. But when, that 8-year-old comes in and hits the hotspot, they hit it once, they hit it again, okay, I've learned it. Just like they're jaded, they move on. But if you can throw in something that wasn't there before, then they go, oh, wait a minute, there's more here. There's more I haven't seen, there's more I've got to look at. We had a game that we built. I was working with JuniorNet, and we were working with Bear and the Big Blue House, Henson and Disney collaboration. And we made a little card game with Tutter the Mouse. I don't know, how many know Tutter the Mouse? Anybody know Tutter the Mouse? He's a little blue mouse, very excitable, very cute. And we had a card game where we had him behind a little table, and it was all videotaped with the Muppets. The most fun I actually had in most of my years in software was directing the Muppets on the soundstage. And, but a kid would, pick a card from him, and he'd go, oh, that's my favorite, and he was always having these great reactions, so he was fun to play with. And there was one that only happened once in a while where he would go, wow, and he'd just disappear off the screen. And that one was so powerful that kids would come back and play for another half an hour just to see that one piece. And JuniorNet was a service that we could track all the kids because we know who each kid was because they came in from their parents' home computers and they came in through their own button. So it could track all the stuff that were their favorites and where they went. And that section was really all designed for the youngest kids. But we were able to find out that we had all these 8, 9, and even 10-year-olds coming in and playing with Tutter because it was so much fun just to see his reaction. So that intermittent reinforcement was taking us way up in age range, more than we had ever expected. It adds renewed interest. This is just what we were talking about. Implies more is going on. So it makes you think that the product is deeper. And because it's not predictable, you don't know when it's going to get your attention. It makes you think that there's a lot bigger environment. And I learned from a lot of game designers that part of creating the illusion of artificial intelligence, the illusion, is that they would just throw something random in, a plane flying by or just something that was unusual, and it could just be a programmed piece, but often people would imagine the depth of your engine, that it was paying attention to all the things that you did, and look what happened. And so it's interesting that you can add just a few of these little random pieces. Somebody was talking yesterday about that random part really can make something a lot more interesting. And it's the basis of all humor and great storytelling. And when I first began studying surprise, this blew me away. Because there's like 20 different kinds of surprise. There's the insight surprise and the aha and the shocked, and I didn't go into all of them here, but they're all very interesting. But the funniest one was this one about humor, because what happens with the storyteller or with the joke is that they're taking you along down a path, and everyone assumes they know where it's going, and then you got the punchline, or you got the plot twist, and that's where the humor is. So there's a friend of mine was telling me this story about being at the circus, and he was watching one of the clowns talking to some of the kids, and the clown's asking these kids, what's your favorite part of the circus? What's your favorite part? And the one boy volunteers, well, he likes the elephants, and the clown goes, oh yeah, elephants are my favorites too. They're the best kissers. And that twist, he says, you can watch the kid's head just kind of explode and twist at first he imagines the clown kissing the elephant, and then he had to imagine himself kissing the elephant. How do you even do that, you know? And so it's like, talk about disequilibration, you know? So surprise is such a big piece of humor that you're connecting. Whenever you really can find something that's funny, you're probably creating surprise out of it. Bubbles must pop. If you have bubbles on the screen, kids are going to want to pop them. That's a hot spot. You can't have that and have them not be poppable. And then the question that comes up a lot for me is with people, we were looking at doing some consulting work with somebody, and they were kind of checking us out to see, well, you know, could we really help them because they know everything already. And he was showing me a prototype of this piece he was working on, and there were some bubbles. So, you know, and he popped a few, and hey, they popped. But they weren't, they were finger up. And finger up means you put your finger, it's like a click. It goes down, and it comes up. It goes down, and it comes up. But pop is this. This is where it has to be responsive. So when you're popping a bubble, it should be finger down. And I'll show you an example of that in a minute. But when I was playing with my then just turned 3-year-old grandson, he'd never been on an iPad before, and we were showing him noodle words, and he kept putting his finger on the bugs and then leaving them there, and then he'd take it off, and then they'd do something. So he'd want to do it, but because it was those are all finger up, it wasn't working. So I took him over to pop. And he hit pop and it popped. And then he just went, and he just like dove into it. Pop, 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 pop. Because it was finger down. So you were, you know, that was a way of increasing the value of it, the response time. So we found that we've made everything interruptible. When the team that just rebuilt Living Books came back to me, they said, they asked us if we would come and join and help put them back together and build the new navigation interface and everything. And I gave them a test. I said, okay, for me, some of these animations are too long when I look at them now. I want you to make everything interruptible. And we watched them kind of shift gears like, you know, this is old code we're working with here. And they came back and said, okay, here. They'd fixed it. They'd made it all interruptible. And that's what I wanted. And then we went in and we added teacher settings so that now the teachers could turn different levels of interactivity on and off, depending on how they wanted to use it. But making things interruptible is a big deal because if you start a long animation on a hotspot and the kids go, oh man, I didn't want to hit that thing again, they ought to be able to get out. Insert the unexpected. This is the piece about surprise. And then, and I'm going to show some examples of this, but know your audience. Knowing who it is that you're going for. You know, we know that the younger audience is different than, you know, the 5-year-old was different than the 8-year-old, as I was saying before. But, you know, most kids under 6 and under, are primarily right hemisphere, which means they're not linear. They're not linear thinkers yet. They're not logical thinkers. They construct meaning. And they're looking at the world in a more holistic point of view, and we call it the magic years, because reindeers on the roof and the tooth fairy, they buy it all. And that's part of what we love about childhood, is that kind of magic that anything can happen, you know, and reinforce that. So, but you know, it's not going to be the same for an 8-year-old. An 8-year-old has different interests, or a 9-year-old, or a 10-year-old. You're going for a very different market, because they might be, at certain ages, they become heavy collectors, or they're really into mastery. And what's the next thing that they can learn? What's the next thing that they can master? Or they're becoming more social, or it's about their identity. And you know, you can just kind of break it down in ages and stages as you go, and you've got to really be paying attention to who they are. This is where all of that information about developmental psychology comes in, where the ages and stages, and when these different learning theories, they really do apply, especially to different age groups. And then not only do you have to know your audience, but you have to listen to your audience. That's really key. So There we go. Okay. Bubbles must pop. So when we were building this, we knew who the kids were, and we, you can just leave it up. And we were having this piece where kids could bump it. I'm swiping my finger to get it to bump. And we were testing with young kids, and we're testing with some older kids, and one of my grandkids was there, he was 8, I think. And he said, if I had a red ball that was floating around the screen kind of randomly, and it got over to the left or right or top or bottom where he could bump it, then you could hit it, and the ball would go crazy. And it would be a target. And it would create more time on task. He was right, and it's a great idea, except that he's 8, and he could already read. So this came back to the know your audience, but what happened to us is that when we asked the 5 and 6-year-olds, and who were the emerging readers who the product was for, they said, more bugs, more bugs, more bugs. And we're going, oh, bugs are expensive. There's a lot of animation here. And so, is my audio on? There we go, okay. So because you could drag it and make the bugs bump. And this kind of control was really what flipped them out. They wanted that. And all the way around, we had to keep making design changes. I'll show you a couple of others, where we got this in here, and you can tap on a word, and you can tap on a bug, and each bug has 3 to 4 different animations. So some are surprises. There's a button on the left, a button on the right, and a button down the middle. And then as you go out and come back in, it might reload a different one. But, and stretch, you can stretch it. So, and the first thing kids did was they did this. What happens if I shoot the bugs? And we didn't have that in there. We had to keep adding stuff all the way along the line because they wanted to know what happens if, what happens if, what happens if, what happens if. And they were driving our design for us. Another piece that was part of it is that, well, here you can click on the box and get another word. And this is how adults used it. It was like this, We just went through it like this, and the kids came in and they did this. Rapid tap. Now, nobody had ever talked about rapid tap before. It's not one of those, Apple doesn't talk about it. And what was happening to us was it would crash the program every time. And because it was like, because everything is interruptible, on every page, everything loads all at once, one after the other. So we're loading a lot of stuff, and it was killing us. And the programmer said, "Oh, I can fix that." And I said, "Yeah, fix it so that they can do that, because that's an inherent play pattern that the kids just showed us that we had no idea about. This is listening to your audience." And how that ended up playing out is once we got it working, we had kids that came in, and they would say, we know that they didn't know the words when they started, and then they're playing this game, and for them it was like, what's the spin the wheel, the game? No, I'm thinking of the game show, Wheel of Fortune, right? And a word comes up, and then this boy who doesn't know the word goes, "I got sparkle," and turns to us, and we're going, "Yes, you did get sparkle." That play pattern now had become a game for them, that they wanted to know what word were they going to get if they created this roulette sort of action here. And these are all, you can click on them all, and of course you can drag the sparkle and then give them some sparkly goodness, to everybody else a little bit of that. But all the way through the design process, I'm going to switch back. All the way through the design process, we had to keep changing everything that we did based on what the kids were teaching us. They were our teachers about what they wanted. So, just to wrap up here, Warren, the art of the hotspot, start with great content. And you really have to have a responsive and intuitive interface. They should know how to get anywhere, go anywhere, do what they want to do, and the program really should be listening to them. If it doesn't, they're going to think it's dumb. I really want to support the kids' curiosity and their ability to play and explore. These play patterns are just key. Every time you can identify a real play pattern, you know your product's going to do well. So how far and how deeply can you get into your play patterns? Add the surprises. Doesn't have to be a lot. It just has to be enough to give that little spark, that little jolt that makes them know there's more here, there's something else. They haven't learned it all. They haven't, they'll get jaded really fast. You think, oh, I gave them a button and it goes like this. Okay. And after they've done it 3 times, they go, okay, that's what that does. But if the next time the head falls off or it shoots off or something else happens or, they'll go, oh, wait a minute, there's more to explore. Tickle their funny bone. Again and again, I think because it's part of surprise, if you're tickling their funny bone, you probably have their attention really well. And the last thing is have fun. You should be having fun yourself. We get real too serious sometimes as worrying about Roy and all the other pieces and competition and whatnot. But if you're having fun and your team is having fun, it'll come through in your product. Thank you.